This study focused in on the emotions of the child receiving the punishment or rewarding cues. Many studies have looked into the topic of the effectiveness of reward and punishment in behaviour modification in children, such as Perez, Edgar, and Fox 2005, who reported that temperamentally shy children under stress and anxiety attended to punishing cues, whereas non-shy children attended more to rewarding cues. Jai Meng et al. Chose to research this topic as no study had looked at the attention bias to rewards and punishment in angry children. Through these previous studies, Jai Meng et al. Predicted that angry children would show a general bias favouring the reward cues. The study undertook 3 different experiments. Selective attention performance in the experiment was determined by the children's response to the removal of points, a punishment, or to the addition of points, a reward. Jai Meng et al. Indicated that anger was generated through an unfair situation where others could be at fault. The first experiment was aimed at determining whether children who reported anger over happiness or neutral in an anger-invoking situation, in this case an unfair game, focused their attention on a reward or a punishment. This study was carried out in a lab. It would have been more effective to carry it out in its naturalistic setting, as the lab could contribute to extra nerves and anxiety, which could affect some of the children's responses, or on the other hand could provide a stage in an audience where some children may use this as an opportunity to grandstand and exaggerate their responses. 80 children were recruited from one school in Hangzhou, China. The concern of the recruitment process is that it focused only on one school in one city. It did not take into account children from rural areas or different cultures. The 80 children were brought into the lab in groups of 2 and participated in an unfair board game, where one child was destined to win through blatant cheating. The idea was that this obvious cheating would evoke the anger in the participating child. The 40 unfairly treated children were then tested for anger. They were asked after the game to show their feelings on a picture chart that showed 3 faces: a happy face, an angry face, and a neutral face. 15% of the children could not identify the neutral face. Children may have experienced emotions other than what was shown on the face charts. For example, if a child was upset but not angry with the unfairness of the game, they may still have selected the angry face as it related closer to their emotion. After the game, 15 children reported feeling angry. These 15 then participated in a selective attention task where they were asked questions. If they responded correctly and swiftly, they would gain 10 points. If they answered correctly after several attempts, or they weren't as rapid with their response, they were awarded 0 points. And if they answered incorrectly, they lost 10 points. Students were informed of their score throughout the test to help keep them engaged in the task. This study could have been better served to also have indicated the emotions shown by the children when they received the punishment. Emotions such as frustration and agitation could be demonstrated and reported by the experimenters to show that the punishment was effective. The journal outlined the experiment showed the majority of angry-prone children responded more to the reward than to punishment. Experiment 2 was carried out to ensure the results of Experiment 1 were not influenced by temperamental anger. This experiment used a rating of the child's anger in familiar settings. The ratings were determined by their mothers and teachers, and subsequently each child was either ranked high or low for anger expressions. The form filled out was designed to measure the child's temperament. Mothers and teachers categorised their children in one of 7 different categories, from extremely true to extremely untrue. The problem with this type of questionnaire is that it could be influenced by varied interpretations, bias towards children, or the misunderstanding of the rankings, and could affect the overall outcome. Once the children were rated, 24 were ranked as being high levels of anger and 32 were ranked as being low levels of anger. Out of the 80 children ranked, only 51 participated in the same selection attention test as Experiment 1, and the results were similar to that of Experiment 1, where the majority of anger-prone children responded more effectively to reward. Experiment 3 used a questionnaire similar to Experiment 2. However, it took into account more emotions than just anger. The extra emotions allowed for a greater understanding of the personality of the children involved in the study. The children sat 3 controlled attention selection tasks. They were also offered the extra motivation of winning their favourite toy. However, the controlled tests meant this outcome wasn't going to happen. This study wasn't very successful in producing anger in the children. I interpreted the reasons for this as that the loss of their favourite toy didn't induce negative emotions in a lot of children, or that it didn't add motivation to the children, or that they were unaware that the test was being controlled. Although a lot of children didn't become angry throughout the attention selection task, those that did supported experiment 1 and 2's outcomes that the majority of angry children responded better to rewarding cues over punishing cues. The 3 experiments supported the original hypothesis that angry-prone children responded better to reward than punishment. In all 3 experiments where children reported to be angry, more children responded to the reward cues. However, some children with anger reported showing response to punishment cues. The big question on this study are the way they define anger in experiments 1 and 2 and their ability to generate anger in the children in experiment 3. In experiment 1, the children had to choose a face from a visual chart with only 3 possible emotions: anger, happiness, and neutral. With a small percentage couldn't even identify the neutral face. Having only 3 emotions meant children experiencing other emotions such as fear, sadness would be more likely to associate with the anger face, skewing the result. In experiment 2, a questionnaire was filled out by the parents. However, again, the focus of emotion was broken down into angry, neutral, and happiness. This way eliminated the 15% who were unsure about the neutral face. However, it did not broaden the emotions the children could be feeling. In experiment 3, the parents again filled out a questionnaire, this time with a broader field of emotions, eliminating problems experienced in the previous 2 experiments. However, their attempts to induce anger in the children were not as successful in this study. The study is supportive that rewards are a more effective behaviour modification in children who were angry or anger-prone. However, it doesn't rule out punishment as a behaviour modification option, and it was also ineffective in identifying the differences between anger and other negative emotions in children.